Visual Studio 2012 gives you a host of new deployment options, from being able to put your projects into the Windows Store to still using Click Once for Windows applications if you want to. You've also got a limited edition of Install Shield you can use if you want to customize your deployment a little more. Let's take a look how that works. So if you're going to use this, you want to add this in as another project into your solution. And you can see here it's down under Other Project Types, Setup and Deployment. Now, I've already got mine enabled. If you come to this screen and you see Enable Install Shield Limited Edition, what you're going to need to do is go download a copy of that. And let me just show you an idea of what you're going to see through a couple of screenshots. So you'll get this first, and that'll direct you to the download website. Once you get there, you're going to see this, where they're going to ask for your information, and you'll get a download link in your email. You download it, you register it, and you restart Visual Studio, and then you should be ready to go. So now when you go to add that project in, it's going to already be enabled, and let's call that Setup App. Setup App 2. When in doubt, add a number. So this is the Project Assistant. Notice it's another window in the tab well, and down on the bottom here is going to lead you through creating your setup. So there's the information screen. And we get company name, app name, all those things that appear in the Programs and Features menu. Change those as needed. Then it asks you, do we require any specific operating systems? Depending on the application type, it may need to be one of the later ones, or it can be one of the earlier. By default, it's pretty much everything Windows. Does your app require any software to be installed? Enable that with a yes, and you probably want to at least pick which version of the .NET framework you're targeting. You'll still get this built without checking that, but you'll get a warning when you build it. So may as well do that here. On the next page, this is something you can't use in the limited edition. If you want more customization with the architecture, you need the paid version of Install Shield. So we'll just go on from there. Application files is where you tell it, what are we actually going to deploy? So I'm going to do this that says Add Project Outputs, and at least primary output, and then depending on where you're deploying, you want maybe other things. If you're going up to a staging, a testing server, then maybe you also want the debug symbols and the source files. It's up to you. You at least need the primary output there, and you should see that show up over here on the right. Now when we go to the next screen is where we can create the shortcuts. So I've got back in my app data folder, program files, there we go. Depends where I clicked on the previous screen as to where that shows up here. So there's my primary output, and by default the shortcut gets called built, which is not very expressive. So let's just change it to simple WPF deployment, and then you can choose, do I want a shortcut on the desktop as well? If I want a different icon, I can choose it there. You've also got access to the registry. .NET is low impact as far as the registry goes, but if you need to do keys, then you can create those directly from here. If you don't, then you want to just leave that as no. And then finally, things for your user. So do you want to display a license agreement? Do you want to prompt them to enter their own name? And do you want them to be able to modify the installation location? Yes or no on any of those. Again, the little lock means you can't use it here. Once you get done, then you're finished. And we can go ahead and from here, right-click on our setup project, and you've got the install and uninstall options right from here. This tells me that my original project needs to be built because I'd made changes. Thank you very much. It's going to go ahead and build it for me. And it looks like everything built. There's my installer. I didn't give the user any options, so it should just roll right through. There's my license username, and the install should be pretty straightforward. And I did say to create a desktop shortcut, so once this rolls through, then we should see that show up. There's finish, and let's get back to the desktop here. And if I scroll over to where my programs are, okay, there's my simple WPF deployment app, and my highly functioning button. So if you do still need to do the more traditional style of deployment, you do have the Install Shield Limited Edition available within Visual Studio 2012.